God, it makes me want to dance. All right, we're back for the latest episode of the League Community Podcast. I, of course, am Dylan Most Dirty. With me today as co-host is Skarzard, and today we are absolutely cursed to have one Mark Sassenrath, aka G-Mang. That's right, 2 Gs. We're going to get to know him a little bit before diving into his work here at Riot, and in particular, we're going to talk a little bit about the Shen update.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're like, oh yeah. We're going to get updated.
That sounds good.
Everything's about to get updated on this podcast. Mark, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you guys?
Man, no, you know, I thought Dylan was going to ask me, but because you asked, I'm doing fantastic. Mark.
Yeah,
I don't care about you, Skarzard.
I mean,
I know
the hosting situation here. I could see some room for improvement. Yeah,
yeah, I know. Yeah, I gotta say.
Yeah. Anyways, okay.
Called out on our own podcast.
Mark has come
in.
to turn us against one another.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm gonna turn it over to you, Mark, because you know, G-Mang. The double G's, got to say, it's always kind of caught me off guard. I wanted, let's just start. Tell me about where you're from. Tell me about your humble beginnings.
Well, I'll talk about gaming mostly, I guess, because that's probably what's relevant here.
Yeah,
we care about you as a person, Mark.
I mean,
but they care about you as a gamer, so you should probably hop to it.
So I grew up with like an old Windows machine, like 3.1 kind of thing.
Oh damn!
We had a lot of educational games, and then Doom 2, which go together really well.
Doom 2 is educational.
That's well, Mom, I'm learning how to defend from hell.
The Hell Demons are good educational facilitators.
Learning what the inside of an eye demon looks like will aid me in my career as a doctor.
Yeah. And you like dodge fireballs and stuff, and it's really relevant to I don't know lots of things. I guess.
Yeah, lots of life experience playing Doom 2.
So Doom 2 was awesome. That was like the first like hardcore real game I'd say I had. And then growing up, we did not have like the 16-bit kind of 2D consoles, but we did have a Game Boy, and I got an N64 as like my first big console. So like lots of nostalgia over that, of course. Your Marios and your all that good stuff.
I'm sorry, did you say Mario?
Yeah, your Mario.
God, your Marios.
Yeah.
What was the first big gaming experience for you that you kind of locked it in? You were like, all right, games are my thing. This isn't just like a passing phase for me.
It might be Brood War. I'm trying to think. Like Brood War was the first really big like online game for me, where I just spent hours and hours for months and months playing mostly custom maps actually, but also using the map editor.
This is so really cool. I never played any of the StarCraft games. Is this a mod of one of the first ones? Is it an expansion?
You can leave, Patrick.
Look, but I don't know.
I'm sitting over here like leaning back with nostalgia, and you're just like, what is this game?
Well, I'm trying to say maybe a lot of people out there don't know what Brood War is. So give me the quickness.
Brood War is a sci-fi real-time strategy game.
Okay.
It is an expansion to StarCraft 1.
Terrans, Zerg, Protoss.
For those who haven't heard. And
Protoss, motherfucker, do you speak it? That's the way you're looking at me right now.
Yeah.
All right, okay. So you got big on Brood War. It was the big kind of experience.
Brood War was really big because it was the first online game I played a lot, and it was also the first game I played that had a really rich map editor. Like I'd played like Tony Hawk 2 had a map editor that I got really into.
Tony Hawk 2 did have a map editor.
Yeah.
It also had a Beast soundtrack.
Dude.
Yeah, the Tony Hawk soundtracks were actually what got me and my brothers into music. Because we were like, whoa, there's different. We're in Alabama. Like, you just hear the banjos and the tumbleweed moving across the street. Yeah. And then you hear, like, people playing Crazy Taxi and Tony Hawk. And you're like, whoa, I didn't know there were so many hip-hop music and The Offspring.
Yeah.
That's the only other band that was involved in this.
Well, Alabama listeners, we still love you. Don't take that too personally.
Well, I'm just saying, if anyone out there is from Alabama and you feel like you need to expand your world, go dig through the old Tony Hawk's Pro Skater games, and you too can join me.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So map editor.
Yeah. So I growing up, I really liked map editors. All your Brood War, I spent a long time doing map editor stuff, like RPG Maker kind of crap. And let's see, Warcraft 3 came out, and that also had a cool map editor. When it came out, it was like too advanced for my lowly PC. I like couldn't play it for like a year. I had to get a new machine.
I didn't use the editors ever, but I sure as hell loved using them. I would always be on the lookout for like playing World War II, but in StarCraft. The most insane crap, or like there'd be all these triggers going off left and right, like USA has entered the war, and a bunch of like Marines show up.
Yeah. Well, there's just a lot of creativity in those maps also.
100%,
I play StarCraft like versions of like card games and like diplomacy and there's all sorts of weird crap on those editors. It's
right.
Really,
cool. What I want to kind of understand, because it sounds, I mean, you to tile this back, right? Like you clearly were the designer on the Shen rework, right? And so and so is this kind of where game design started for you, where you were like, oh, I'm starting to get into all these map editors? Was that kind of what kicked off your passion or your drive to want to become a game designer, or how did that get in there?
Yeah, it was probably part of it. I mean, I didn't really honestly think I would do game design as a big thing until college. For me, it was like mostly a hobby thing.
Yeah.
Like I'd be like, oh, I'm going to make a D&D class or a card game or some a map.
You did everything that I love when you were a child. Yeah. This is crazy.
Yeah.
So, Sassy, may I call you Sassy?
You can. Yeah, you may.
That resolves.
Yeah.
So Sassy, what I want to know most, because you have this cool extensive background in gaming and making all this stuff, is how did you make it to be where you are within Riot, working on the Shen rework? What was that journey like? How do you get from point A to point B there?
Yeah. So I started playing LoL back in 2010 with a bunch of friends, and played it a lot throughout college, and then around senior year, I was like kind of realizing that I actually did want to get into gaming full time as a job, and I applied to Riot QA around the end of the year, and I got in as a game QA.
What is all kind of the stuff that you've worked on while you've been here? Because I know you've always been involved in doing some cool behind the scenes tech stuff that maybe a lot of people wouldn't know about.
Yeah, I mean, I did a lot of game QA stuff on new code things, like a lot of stuff you probably wouldn't notice, like a lot of animation tech. So like the fact that like characters can do all sorts of like animations that blend together on top of each other at the same time. Like if you see like a lot of instant cast spells now, they'll like have the upper body doing something, lower body doing something else, and all those kinds of combinations.
Yeah,
like, I was on the teams that was doing a lot of the work.
There's like Zed, for those of you out there, the big Zed players. Zed can like throw shurikens while moving in a different direction.
Yeah, all those the subtle things over there.
Bless you,
like,
Mark.
Like Syndra's orbs, kind of how they like rotate independently of her body and all that cool stuff.
What do you mean? Like they go around her, but what are you talking about?
So Syndra as a character, if you watch her actually turn around a lot, you won't see the orbs swivel and like turn on point whenever she turns. They kind of like have their own path in space.
Yeah,
right?
that would look pretty terrible.
Yeah, that was close to shipping until we kind of like had to intervene.
Okay.
Yeah, I was like, oh no, this is not. Well, Mark, not gonna look good.
we do notice your work.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, I also want to call out. You know, you were very instrumental in working on the Xerath update that Zelnath and Xenon the Stoic Daniel Klein worked on. You also worked on Elise and the father of the Gangplank barrels.
Yeah. So over time, I got some cool projects while I was still in QA. Like for Xerath was a big project for me where I learned a lot about game design regarding basically just like how to analyze feedback and also like what it means to like have high threat uptime against people at long ranges and stuff like that. I mean, we can get into all that nerdy crap if you guys are interested.
Yeah, for people listening, meeting Mark Sassenrath is one of the moments I realized I didn't know a lot as a game designer, because he's like, oh, what do you think about Xerath? I'm like, I don't know, he does a lot of damage, he's kind of doing it from long range, and he's like, well, here's what I think, and he has a whiteboard and a PowerPoint. I'm like, this makes so much sense. Wow, you're so good at this, God. And so, and I guess now that brings us to Shen, I guess, right? Dylan, you were a big Shen player at some point, right?
Yeah, once upon a time. I mean, I know that he appealed to the he appealed to my rather basic skills when I first started the game. I mean, who am I kidding? They're still there. But he was just, he's a ninja. He's a flippin' ninja, or is that only on Kennen? I think that's on all of them, right?
He's still a flippin' ninja.
We might have gotten rid of it at some point. I don't know.
In our hearts.
I know we've become more sensitive about like buff
it.
bar messiness over the years.
Sure. But yeah, I mean, he's a pretty basic, appealing guy. You know, it's easy to not die as him. You got a lot of clutch save moments, taunts are fun, all that stuff.
Yeah.
I do feel like it's been very interesting with him over the years, though, because, you know, alternatively, you're seeing him a hell of a lot, game after game, or he'll just go vast stretches where you just don't see him at all. Like, God, I can't remember the last game I saw him in.
Yeah. I think high reliability champions can fall into that a bit more,
Gotcha.
Where when they reach a certain threshold of power, given their reliability, they get played a lot. And Shen has historically been one of those. I mean, at not competitive levels of play, his ultimate is, I would not consider a reliable spell just because the coordination can be pretty tricky. But like once you guys get the coordination down his ultimate, he's a pretty reliable champion.
So when you talk about high reliability, kind of as a design concept, expand a little bit. What do you mean when you're saying high reliability? Like, what are some high reliability spells?
they're kind of what you think when you hear that, right? There are spells that probably don't care a whole lot about aiming or what the target's decision making is or what kind of context your fight is under. It's just a spell that you want to cast when you can cast it, and it's going to have a useful effect, regardless of the circumstances. And Vorpal Blade's probably a pretty good example of that. When you talk about Key Strike, I would say Key Strike's reliable. Obviously, there's like a cooldown that you have to worry about getting into melee range.
Most of the time, when you need to key strike someone, you're key striking.
Yeah, key striking is pretty reliable. And in general, reliability is something that is not something you don't want in the game at all. Like targeted spells definitely have a place in League of Legends, but overall, your net pattern when you're dueling someone should not be entirely predictable. It should be like a cool back and forth where you're not exactly certain who's going to land what and how things are going to play out. And in general, I think we've tended to move champion abilities away from taken as a whole, this whole kit is really reliable, and I just need to apply it correctly, and more towards when I get into a fight with someone who's even level with me, we're not sure what's going to happen. There's going to be a cool duel that goes back and forth or something like that.
They have this move in their pocket. I have this move in my pocket. Things that we can do, and I feel like what you're describing here is kind of been the trend. I think, Dylan, with Shen in pro play or in the minds of players, right? There's like, I don't like laning against him when he's strong. He just clicks on me, but I like him being around because the ult is cool. Like it's a cool moment when he does it. Yeah,
the ult is definitely a spell that we from the very beginning of the rework discussions, we were like, this ultimate's really cool, it's really unique, and we don't want it getting taken out of League of Legends.
So you mentioned the opening of these discussions. That's something I'm always really curious about with these. I know from some past experience that we have the idea of like the breaking meeting where everybody meets up, everybody involved meets up for the first time. We talk about everything about the character, dig into who they are, who they want to be, their fears, their hopes, their dreams, and all that type of stuff. With you, I think Shen was kind of your first more independent project after some of the associated, kind of QA projects we talked about. What was that like? That first, day you guys just dug into what he was, what's good, what's
Shen
bad.
on the whiteboard.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Throw it
out there.
Yeah, well, Shen was cool to talk about because Shen was a character that had a lot of different interpretations and a lot of different reasons different people liked him. And you can take him in a lot of different directions. When we sat down, we had conversations about like, maybe this guy shouldn't be a tank, or maybe Shen really shouldn't look like what he looks like. Maybe we want to do. You
mean like not look like a ninja or something?
Basically because ninja is more of a class than a character, I think. Right? Like
sure.
We have a lot of ninjas in League of Legends, and we don't want Shen taking up all the ninja space, so he shouldn't have dibs to everything ninja all the time.
Yeah, just because he was the first one, because that won't matter.
But he should be independent too. It was kind of a thing with me always. People be like, "Oh, why the heck is a ninja tanky?" I was like, "Well, we've already got a lot of ninjas that kill you in the face with blades, lightning dashes, all that stuff. Like, why not? He's got his own little independent thing going on."
Yeah, I think in general, when we thought about Shen, we wanted to make sure that he was distinct from other characters. And I think if we said, "Oh, Shen's a ninja, therefore he should be this lightweight assassin character who bursts you," it's like, well, Zed and Akali are already doing this. It's not adding very much to the game to do that. Yeah.
And I always kind of saw it. There were other games, I think the Final Fantasy MMOs 11 and 14 have had concepts like this in the past where games will have a ninja that like dodges a lot.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Like
they kind of,
ninja,
and you're just sort of like, so they're tanky through the fact that they don't take a lot of damage. They're able to resist in that way.
Totally.
And so I kind of could see it. When I had started playing Shen, I was like, oh, yeah, it's weird that he builds a bunch of health and a burning cape and stands next to you. Like, that part's weird. But, like, when he dashes through the group of everyone and everyone's like, whoa, we've been misdirected. I'm like, all right, that feels like a neat thing to do, right?
Totally.
But Scarborough, we removed dodge from the game.
Well, we removed random dodge from the game.
Shout outs to dodge.
Yeah.
Well, so I mean, Shen has dodge built into his kit essentially now, right? Isn't that correct?
Well, the new W. Whether or not you want to call it literally dodge, but yeah, his spirit blade basically parries all incoming attacks that would hit any champions on his team nearby, and so like a really common thing for Shen to do is to like dive into the enemy team, bring his sword up to him, and then immediately set off this dodge zone where he's just parrying all your attacks, basically.
Yeah. Gotcha. So you mentioned that spirit blade. It seems like back, you guys were talking about what Shen was, the directions you wanted to take him.
Yeah.
It seems like that new spirit blade mechanic is really kind of the core of what you guys set out to kind of pursue early on. Like this is what you kind of wanted to build the new squeeze around, so to speak.
At the start, no. I mean, champion exploration these days, oftentimes, or champion update in this case, exploration. A lot of times, the first kit you do isn't the one you end up shipping. I mean, I could probably sit here and ramble about like 5 or 6 different kits Shen had.
I need to. I'm sorry. I need to pause on this. What? Tell me, like, what was the coolest ability that you could have had, or like some cool like ninja Shen kits? Because I remember seeing some spicy stuff from back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, there was all sorts of ones that I think on another champion could have worked, possibly.
Sure.
But some of the cool ones, there was a version where, like, when Shen stood still for, like, a couple seconds, he would, like, enter this meditative state, and then he could double cast his next spell. And so he tended to be this very, like, very stop and go sort of martial arts master,
like a stoic monk.
Yeah. Where he'd stand in the middle of the fight for a couple seconds, and you'd see him like going into his like his key form or whatever, and then like just like double dash or something.
Yo, that's sick. Thing. Okay, wait, one more. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I need this.
But I mean, that one didn't work very well based on the demands we had basically as a top laner kind of thing, and like what
it sounds cool. Just
Also, it doesn't
Shen.
work with his ultimate. And, like there's other weird stuff going on. But that was a cool one. We had another one that was like focused on him being more of a dive buddy. I had an ability that I called Ninja Rope, where
Ninja Rope.
Yeah, he cast. It was a targeted spell on an ally. You could also target a minion, and it would put a little rope on him.
Yeah.
That's attached to you, and you had to wait before you could recast it. When you recast it, you jump to their position.
Okay.
And so, he would do a thing where like he'd be like jungler go in or something, and he would like tether to them and go in with them.
And you could probably set that up with a shadow dash to just like. Teammates are bringing Shen with you almost anywhere.
Yeah. There was a lot of cool plays, but ultimately it also was one of those things where it's like, this could maybe go on a character, but it's probably not the right fit for Shen. I mean, in that case in particular, Shen is oftentimes not a guy who's there for the fight setup. He's there for the fight once it's like actually starting.
Sure. Moral conflict.
Yeah. And so
like Power Rangers into the scene.
Yeah, and so requiring that he like buddy up with an ally before the fight starts was like not really fitting into his ultimate.
This is, I mean, this is pretty cool here because I know, champion update is always going to be a huge challenge, and we've learned so much over the years. And it sounds like you guys really early kind of identified the things that you really liked and wanted to stick, between the R and the E especially, and then some other areas where you felt like there could be more. And it sounds like you were really consistent about making sure that like even if you had some really random cool idea, if it wasn't going to conflict with those things that we really did want to keep pure, it wasn't going to work out.
Yeah, totally. A lot of, I think that's one of the big differences between champion and champ up is when you're doing a new champion, you have a lot of freedom to define what the character is, but you also have a lot of responsibility to define everything about them, and that's a lot of work. And then on the champ up side, you have the benefit of like, I don't have to make a whole character from scratch. I have, I just have to work a couple abilities. On the flip side, I have to make a whole new, gameplay pattern with only a couple slots, and it needs to fit into this existing pattern.
So let me break it down. So we're basically saying passive QW, like when you guys are starting this up at the beginning, passive QW are going.
I mean, baseline pattern is going basically.
Right. Yeah.
Which
E and R are probably staying because they're distinct and they give them a spot.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, R especially. E, were like if you have a good reason, we can talk about E or variations of E maybe.
Right.
But yeah, QW and passive were like these could go for whatever reason.
So Shadow Dash and Stand United stay in the kit.
Yeah.
And you talked about, you were like, one is like a master where he kind of hesitates for a bit and then attacks, and you have this other one that you were talking about. But tell me about the one we landed on.
Yeah.
Right. How did you get to this? And tell me a little bit about this kit. I think people now will have seen the Shen reveal.
Oh yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
If you haven't, pause, go read the article, and come back.
Yeah. Shen's base pattern has changed a lot.
So, by the way, that's all I'm going to put in the patch notes. By the way, he's changed a lot.
Yeah. Sorry.
All right. So how do we get here?
So at one point we thought about Shen's relationship with Zed, basically, and we were like, well. Shen does these cool things with his shadow clones. If Shen were to have a clone, what would it look like? Basically.
Yeah, that's so cool.
It hurts.
So like we went through the different aspects we would expect his clone to be, right? Instead of being like these disposable, aggressive things, it would be like this long-term sort of protective entity, right? we iterated on it a lot, where it still was a clone, but it wasn't really attacking or dealing much damage on its own. And eventually we were like, it doesn't really make sense that there's this like clone character standing here menacingly all the time. He's not actually dealing damage or having any AI or casting any
having
spells,
a weird
really.
shadow guy.
Yeah.
Maybe a little too like exactly Zed at that point.
Possibly, yeah, depending on how he executed on it. But I think ultimately it was like, it doesn't really make much sense that this is a clone at this point. But we still have this like other entity that he's using as a tool that facilitates this whole new pattern. And so we were like, well, what kind of things does Shen, what are iconic to Shen? And we ended up talking about his swords and how he has these two swords on his back. And we were like, well, if he's representing this sort of balanced duality thing, we could sort of split those swords up, and one could be sort of his mortal sword and one can be his spirit sword. And so the spirit blade is like representing his connection to and his responsibilities towards that sort of other spirit realm. And, obviously you can see in gameplay how he utilizes it, where it's not fighting on its own. It's sort of this like ability, this thing that he can sort of fuse with and use to fight.
I, by the way, I get so excited when I see him in game because I do think that is really a cool idea. Like he has this tiny little blade or whatever that he just normally attacks with. And then you like summon the soul blade of your father and he just has this super cool 3-hit animation thing. The Shen Pod did a really good job on the art, on like animations. I was not a big fan of Shen before, and now I just love looking at him in game because the blade is so cool.
This is a really cool case of one of those ones where we didn't go full Scion level or anything like that, but he's actually got some really sick art updates and just kind of general support for what originally I think was kind of a gameplay focused update. But I saw that page and I was just like, whoa, that's a new Shen.
Yeah, I mean, Shen was a character that we thought a lot about, like possibly going more experimental on his character, but ultimately we were like, when you look at the Shen splash art, that's a really cool character.
Shen's
actually.
Cool, man.
Yeah, like if we can just deliver that well, like we got a sweet champion. Let's not overthink things here.
Cool. So I know you were talking about the sword, obviously.
Yeah.
I feel like Orianna is a character that a ton of people have loved. Really was kind of an out there league champion when she first showed up, and has been really popular over the years. Really beloved by a lot of players. I feel like there's obviously kind of some inspiration there, but in a really cool way. In that, if I'm correct, it seems like he almost has a little less control at range, obviously, about where his implement is going to be. But kind of reinforcing that like melee centric approach he has to have. He always has to be pulling it through his enemy. Yeah,
that was something we were really careful about throughout the design. Was like, we don't want this character feeling too mage-like, or too much like Orianna or something like that. And that's why his ultimate cast paradigm is only I'm casting it to my current position, so that requires me to position myself really aggressively. And the fact that it doesn't like deal damage on its own, the fact that like I need to actually get up in the fight and actually beat people up and be the hero here.
Gotcha.
Was a big part of the design.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, so, Shen is, like we had talked about a little earlier, it almost felt like he was one of those guys who almost was too strong or too weak, and maybe that was just because he was so reliable, and it pretty much becomes pure numbers at that point. I don't really know, but that's what people like you always tell me. Do we think now he's going to be at a point where I guess he has more levers, as you guys say, to kind of to manipulate to kind of get him in more of a sweet spot?
I don't know if levers is the term I would use, but yeah, I mean, like, this is a character who cares a lot more about context and execution than Live Shen does, right?
Well, I think there's a lot of, I mean, for instance, right, old Shen, Feint is just, it's a brainless ability that's always good, right? It's like, oh, am I taking damage? Press Feint. And there's a little bit of a thing, I guess, where it's like, oh, am I going to run out of energy if I do this? Am I not going to have enough for stuff? But it feels like the new Feint, I don't know what it's called. Do you know? Does it have a cool name?
Are you talking about the passive or the W?
The W.
The W is called Spirit's Refuge.
Ooh, well, the spirit. Yeah. Well, I'm saying like that ability, the Spirit's Refuge, is super cool because it's like, all right, are there attacks I can block or not? Right? Like, are there cool things I can do?
When your allies play into it too?
Yeah, I mean, Shen cares a lot about like the nuances of how a fight plays out with this new kit. Obviously, his W is a big deal regarding like who on my enemy team has auto attacks and who do I think they're going to focus, and can I play out this fight in such a way where I can be next to the ally so I can QW and save them or something like that. And Shen sort of amps up his dive buddy characteristics with his QW because if his ally is willing to go deep in the fight with him, that's really awesome, right? He can R onto him, he can E, he can QW, and the ally will be there fighting with him, and they both get the benefit of the dodge and all that stuff, so that's really cool. And then obviously the Q also cares a lot about matchups. He tends to want to try to zigzag and tiptoe around characters that he has access to, and so he cares a lot about like what kind of threat the enemy team will have, and also like who can he actually get to. So like if you're in top lane, for example, you care a lot about the difference between whether the opponent's ranged or melee, right? If they're melee, you're going to do a lot of like, I'm going to try to tiptoe around them and do these Qs.
Or like, do they have targeted spells, or do they have like on hit like basic attack abilities, right?
Yeah.
And I love this a lot because you end up with a situation where when we're playtesting, you'll see like, there's a Shen and he's doing pretty well, or he's doing pretty average, and then you have a good Shen player who is very meticulously watching those basic attack interactions. You're like, well, he's never dying, and his allies are never dying, right? Like, and so the true mastery curve with Shen here actually shows itself that becoming really good at this champion is going to let you do a lot of crazy things. Where I think before, he never really felt that appealing from, I would say, a mastery curve perspective.
Right. You don't see a lot of like frag videos of
You're not like here's my
dang,
there's someone whose entire YouTube there's someone, shout out to Red Mercy, whose entire YouTube like contingency is based on Zed. And him teaching people to play Zed.
You can
and
do
it's
that on
super
Zed.
cool.
Yeah.
Right? And you're not going to be like, all right, here goes Shen tips.
Yeah.
Is someone in front of you? Dash at him. Watch the map to shield a person.
Keep that energy up.
Yeah, and so I love that. I love that is now on this champion.
Yeah. And in general, we were like, Shen is a character, so he is a tank and he's gonna buy tank items, but like among tanks, he should probably feel the most like dexterous and the most like agile kind of character among tanks, and he's someone whose defenses should come from skillful play and not just like I'm a stat sponge who just soaks up damage like this big
it seems
meathead.
like it's really going to matter where he's standing, both for for the defensive ability as well as pulling the sword through people.
Yeah, totally. Like your ability to pull swords correctly is going to affect your passive resets, which is a huge portion of your tankiness.
And also your damage output, right?
Also your damage output, absolutely, yeah. And then obviously your choice of where and how to W is also a huge deal. And so this is a character whose defensive pattern has moved a lot out of like, I'm going to sponge soak everything with just, standing around, and more towards, for a tank, I actually don't have super high base stats here. I need to actually really actively use my defensive abilities correctly in the fight.
Sure. I'm curious about his energy and just kind of general varied ability usage. I feel like a complaint with original Shen was kind of difficulty with energy regen, and then also just almost in some cases it would not be worth casting one of the abilities in favor of making sure that you can cast the two others. Do we feel like we've improved upon that at all, or was that not actually an issue and I'm just crazy?
I mean, energy was something that is contentious internally, actually, like within design.
Sure.
Outright, there's a lot of different opinions about what we should do with things like energy.
What did you do?
For Shen, we didn't do anything crazy experimental on him. It's still a similar general thing where it's like, hey, we're going to reward you for taking risks and staying in fights, which a lot of energy characters do. And if you're just going to like peel disengage forever and just escape all the time, you're probably going to run out of energy. And beyond that, we didn't push things too much. So with the new one, like if you're generally like keeping up with your fight and you're using your Qs and you're hitting things, your energy will probably stay reasonably up most of the game. But if you're like, hey, I'm just going to be this tricky, guy who's, going to E all over the map and just keep spamming spells and not really pay attention to my energy bar, you're probably going to not be able to cast spells.
It definitely feels like this is a champion that you were going to fail on sometimes. But that when you fail, you're gonna know. You're gonna be like, oh well, I didn't put my sword through someone. I didn't do,
Isn't that always a problem?
Yeah,
if you have a sword and you didn't put
I
it
will
through
say
somebody.
most of my personal failure cases in life are because I didn't put a sword through someone successfully. It's just like, I didn't.
Violent.
He's probably pretty mad about it afterwards.
I know, that was a little rude. I want to ask you a question here. I want to know for you personally, because in the beginning we were talking about this is you worked on a lot of QA things, and Shen has kind of been your baby for a long time. I want to know what do you find was like the biggest challenge for you? What was something that you maybe didn't even think you could do, or you thought was a really like took a lot out of you personally to execute?
That's a good question. I think.
Thanks. I made it myself.
Yeah. I mean, overall, like the Shen project, the hardest part for me was definitely coming up with the actual pattern that really fit the character. I think like I got there and I was all like excited to try all these crazy new things, right? And I was like,
just really go mad scientist.
Let's go crazy and make this whole new kit.
New designer thing.
And then they kept failing, and the reason was almost always there could be something here, but this is not for Shen. This doesn't work
Gotcha.
with this ultimate, or this doesn't work with this character, or something like that. And it was like, well, we need to really like sit down and appreciate the kind of patterns that this R is calling for and this character is calling for, and how should Shen be moving in a fight, and how should he be moving around the map, and does this kit actually work with that? And that took a while. It took, I don't know, several months before we really had a kit that we were like, let's actually move forward with this.
So you kind of had to like stop being stubborn a little bit in like trying to force these things that didn't work.
And I think it was also like not to get too attached when you're prototyping things. You know, like you need to be ready to kill things like while they're still on paper, even if everyone in the room likes it. Like if a good analysis comes up, it's like this is not going to work. Like you need to really think it through, because you can spend months and months and months, and I did spend months and months working on kits that did not fit the character. You know.
Yeah. No, I think there's tons of that. Actually, there's a little bit of trivia for people. The name for a champion, for like a new champion, is like the last thing that we come up with to solve that issue of getting attached, like you're talking about, because we'd have all the time, way back in the day, where you would have a name and everyone would be like, well, no, don't get too stuck to it because we don't know anything else. And I kind of feel like that lesson has always been instilled in me at a young designer age, where you're like, where you're like, don't, you can't get attached to, Kraken Priestess. Which was Alawi's thing, right? Where if everyone has a cool pet name, they're going to do it. And I think in Champion Update, that's definitely a big one, right? It's like sometimes you got to let it go, or you're not going to find the thing that's really going to make people really happy.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry. Yeah, that was
I agree.
That was incredibly deep.
Look, man. That's what you call me for, Dylan.
So something you said earlier, you just kind of wrap things up. Got me pretty excited, which was just the idea of him being kind of a reverse Zed. There are those matchups throughout League that just happen to like really kind of be cool. Just two characters' kits interact in such a way that they create really fun gameplay and spectating even.
Yeah.
Does that happen at all in this case? Am I reaching? Does this new Shen have like a really fun matchup at all with Zed? How's that play out?
With Zed, I haven't played too many Shen vs. Zed matchups now that I can think about it. We've mostly been playing him in top and jungle with like peppering of support here and there. But we haven't tried versus Zed. That actually sounds like it could be kind of exciting.
Like tomorrow or the next day, I'll play Zed top against you.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, like a lore fight of top lane. Yeah.
Oh, man.
I feel like, I'm not going to lie, I feel like it goes pretty heavily in Shen's favor. Shen builds a lot of tank items.
I mean, armor stacking would probably be pretty good.
Zed's probably trying not to fight that.
Doesn't Zed dodge the hell out of his spirit sword, though?
Yeah. Zed's got some mobility. That's
there's definitely some
and
tricksiness, but at a certain point, you're like, Shen's like, out of energy. I need to beat this tank. And Shen's just like, nah, man, I'm good.
Yeah.
Come to me, spirit sword. Yeah,
I mean,
really
that could be, but like,
are you telling me we updated the VO?
No,
okay.
I wish. I wish we had. I wish it was like, have at you, Spirit Blade.
Yeah, but I mean, Zed does have the advantage of like Shen's W doesn't do as much to Zed as it would to like a Jax or Aurelia or something like that.
Sure.
So he's mostly has to worry about the shield and the items he's buying, and not as much the dodge effect. So he's got that going for him.
I eagerly await that matchup. And
what are you most excited to see when Shen is live and in the hands of players?
Well, I mean, there's a lot for me to be excited about. Like, in general, like, this is a character that when we're playing him in playtests, like, we're still like feeling the mastery curve on this character, and it's like, oh wow, like there's this thing I wasn't thinking about. It's like,
that's different.
When I'm queuing, I want to like err on the side of the edge of the map so it like cuts across the middle more, or like when I'm EQing in, I want to be mindful of like where my next queue will start, and there's all sorts of like these considerations. And so in general, just like how people master the queue is probably the area that I'm most excited for. And I think also like at higher levels of play, I imagine there's going to be a lot of cool plays with the W where people are like, oh, we're going to do this coordinated dive buddy thing and be just immune to auto attacks for a couple seconds in this fight.
Yeah, I believe we did use the word, the scary word unkillable in the reveal article. So I'm a little, I'm definitely excited for those YouTube videos.
I definitely think there's the, like I'm sure you've seen the Phoenix 1v4 Azir outplay where he gets a quadra kill and
that's dope.
They all try to dive him. And I'm excited for the one where like Shen is really low or Shen's ally is really low. And I love those because you hear the casters get more ramped up and they're like, oh, well, this is going to be your standard dive. Oh my God, what was that? And like knowing Shen moving around and moving the blade, so someone like double lift is able to get a pentakill because he's got his Shen buddy with him is there will definitely be moments like that. For sure.
Especially in like 2v2s a lot of times. I see when like with the Shen, when there's like a jungle fight or something like that, like you see a lot of really cool plays with like the interactions of his W and his Q and like trying to coordinate with them.
I'm definitely seeing it now. You talk a ton about how he was one of the most reliable champs, and we've injected what seems like a healthy dose of variability, skillful expression, all that stuff. So
hopefully,
yeah. Honestly, I'm pretty dang excited. I'm going to be terrible with him, but I am excited. I'm excited to be terrible.
I think most people take a couple games to learn, like myself included, and are like competitive players. Like I played him for a couple days, and then I watch a competitive player, and I'm like, this guy's such a scrub. He doesn't understand what his champion.
Yeah, it kind of terrifies me that you guys are saying you're still learning, even though you've been playing him for months, and you freaking made him.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna have a great time, I'm sure. All right, Mark. Well, I am excited, as I said. I'm sure all the players are as well, and I just want to thank you for coming out to chat with Scarborough and I. Players out there, yeah, absolutely, man. Moving on to the players. Players out there, thank you for listening in as always, and make sure to comment, rate us, review us, give us validation. Let us know what you liked, what you didn't like, and all that so we can keep getting better. Appreciate you guys listening in. Take care.